Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another Greyscalegorilla live show. Chad, how are you today?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Oh, man, I'm feeling fantastic. This might be the third live show I wore the same shirt, but that's okay.
You just have multiple red shirts, that's all.
That's right. It's the only shirt I wear anymore. Welcome to another Greyscalegorilla live show. Thank you guys so much for showing up today. Today, we will be talking all about materials and how to add realistic details to your materials, how to set up realistic materials, how to think about materials like an artist and as a compositor and as somebody who's out there trying to make realistic renders. This is one of many in a series of live shows we've done all about how to help you guys make more realistic looking renders. A few weeks back, we talked about cameras. We did 2 episodes about lighting. And today, it's all about materials, baby. I know, Chad, you're excited.
I like materials just a little bit.
Just a little. Just a little. Chad obsesses over materials. I would say lighting, too. But I'm really excited extra today because I'll be asking Chad a few questions, too. Some things about how to use, how to honestly make more realistic materials in Octane specifically. Some questions that I had. So I'm excited to ask you some questions too, buddy. Let's talk to the chat. Thank you guys so much for coming today. If you are in the chat, let's pull up the chat, actually. Let's pull up the chat overlay and see where everybody's from. Let us know where you're from today. We love seeing all the countries and states pop up. And also, do us a huge favor as we get started. Please, if you're on YouTube, hit the like button on this video. We're going to be answering questions. We're going to be diving deep into materials, and your help by hitting the like button is going to let more people know that we're live. It's going to wake up the YouTube algorithm and help us out as well. So please hit the like button. And if you want to see future episodes of us live and you don't want to miss them, hit the notifications and YouTube will let you know when we're going live. We got DC. Let me get the logo out of the way. Look at this. Chi-Town, baby. What's up? Orlando. Vienna's here. Brooke from Ethiopia. That's amazing.
Wow.
Louisiana, crazy. Germany.
Los Angeles.
Let me get rid of this logo so we could see all this on the stream.
Chile.
Zoop.
PDX.
Love it. Jacksonville. Love it. Thank you guys from New York. Cheers from all over the world. So amazing every time. And if you can do us a favor, again, hit the like button. If you're on the Twitter, hit a retweet on our tweet we just put out. Let everybody know we are live, and that helps us out and helps us do more of these shows. Hey, Nick, is the shirt red? It sure is. Sure is. I got the red shirt on today.
I think I have the same shirt on, dude.
Are you serious?
Yeah, look.
it's the uniform.
Under a few layers. It's cold here today, so.
It's chilly. Yeah. Oh, look at that. It's a night. It's like a heather red. I don't know what to call this type of red, Jed.
It's heather red.
It's like a flaky, it's beautiful. Hello from Paris, Atlanta. Sweden's in the house. Love it. Still love my Save Often GSG shirt from Havred. Save Often. That is you do not want to lose your work, friends. Please don't forget to save. We had that in the studio we were working in for a while. This was Greyscalegorilla. We were all in a studio with some other animators, some other great animators in a studio. At least once an hour, somebody would yell, "Don't forget to save. Don't forget to save." Just a nice little reminder for everybody. Chad, do you have autosave on, or are you a don't forget to save person?
Autosave for life. But then I also save a lot too.
Yeah, so that's right.
I kind of you get into this habit with, especially with GPU rendering, where you're just like, you're about to do something that could screw everything up. So you're like, Control S, let me just save that really quick.
Yeah. The GPU renderers will get you a little more used to saving more often.
For sure. But autosave is great though, man. Like that should be in every application.
Autosave for life. Hi from Chicago. Control S. Yeah. It's like the extra. All right, guys, get your questions ready. Thank you so much for the retweets. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for all that stuff. It does help us here on these live shows. One quick last note about the live shows and about where they're headed before we get started on your questions. So we are going to start to bring some of these live shows to the podcast. So this is something many of you have been asking. Hey, what's up with the podcast? Are you bringing it back? And we have many different ideas for the podcast, but for the near future, if you missed these shows, or if you wanted to listen to these shows and you didn't, and you had time in your car, you had time washing the dishes, you had time mowing the lawn, whatever you're up to in the next month, and you wanted another way to listen to some of these questions, or you missed a show, we're going to be starting to bring some of these live shows to the podcast, including some other interviews we haven't published on the podcast before, and some other new stuff coming soon. So if you have been sitting there looking at the podcast, the Greyscalegorilla podcast, wondering when there's new stuff coming, we got some new stuff coming soon. So take, if you're not subscribed, take a minute and go do that as well. All right, let's jump into some questions. Get your questions ready. We're going to be talking about materials today. Any questions you have about adding, creating realistic materials? Will also be, and if you have anything about some of the specifics about different renderers, I think we'll be, as far as materials go, I think we could start to answer some of those as well. And then don't forget, later in the stream, we're going to be jumping in and watching Chad add some realistic details to materials live, and watch how he thinks about this so that all of us can use some of the same tips and tricks here. So why don't you get some questions ready? If you have a question for us, just hit Q and then ask the question after that. That'll help us find your question in the crowd. Trey says, am I the only one watching from Twitch? I don't think so. We've seen some other questions come through. So thank you guys if you're watching on Facebook or Twitch or YouTube. We appreciate it. All right, let's see here. Trey asks, do we have any inside intel on all the graphics card shortages? I don't even think this is a guess. I think this is a pretty well-known secret, which is crypto is absolutely taking over the GPU market right now. And that has a lot to do with it. On top of shortages all across the board, including chips, including lumber, including a lot of just physical things in the world that are having a hard time moving around the world right now. Chad, do you know any other conspiracies about all the graphics cards?
I mean, it's pretty insane right now. If you're looking to get a system, you're almost better off going with a pre-built, because these companies that do pre-built systems have supply chains where they can get graphics cards a lot easier than we can. So that's some advice. But no, I mean, I've got no inside track. I have no idea. Like I'm a pre-built kind of person simply for that kind of reason, is that you're not. You basically, that's somebody else's issue to like deal with supply chain and all that. But yeah,
that's a good way to think of it. The bigger companies are going to have more leverage to get these, because they're going to buy 1,000 at a time or 100 at a time, and these manufacturers are going to be more likely to make that deal and say, yeah, we'd rather ship 100 of them to you than worry about shipping one to 100 different people. It's just easier, right? So that's a good tip for now, to look at some of those manufacturers. We got a question from Lokesh. Hope I said your name right. More Octane materials coming to Plus soon? Yes. In the, look for an announcement in the next month or so. We have a new material collection. We have a new imperfection collection as well, and some other goodies coming out within the next month or so. So keep an eye out for that. Of course, all of our materials are compatible with Octane, Arnold, and Redshift. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for the question. Here's another good one. Alessandro says, emissive materials in the Plus library, please. Chad, you have anything to say about that?
I can't say anything.
Okay, stay tuned.
I'm under embargo.
That was a test, and Chad passed. Stay tuned, folks. We have some interesting collections coming soon, and I think you'll be happy with the next one. Alessandro, thank you for that question. Let's see here. Does Chaos Group now making Vray in-house change your view of this engine for C4D? Chad, how's Vray out there in the world?
The answer to that is no. Does
All
not
right.
change my mind.
All right. Next question. Let's see here. Jake is asking, are you using aces still to get that sweet, sweet highlight fall off? Chad, are you rocking aces?
You know it.
Yeah, I've added aces to my default Cinema 4D scene file, my default Octane Cinema 4D scene file that I've set up that has all my Octane stuff dialed in. It's got an Octane camera with a tag on it. It's got an Octane Sky with HDRI link on it, ready to go. And once I had aces set up, I just added that workflow right to that scene file, and I just get all the magic of aces now by default. And it looks incredible. Every once in a while, like I'll go disable it, and I'm like, oh, never mind. I'll never do that again.
Yeah, I'm all aces in Octane and in Arnold, but not in Redshift. I'm using a LUT in Redshift just because the Redshift workflow is still kind of janky. So,
yeah. Nikon, hopefully I said your name right, says, will you be talking about Redshift 2 or Octane? One love only. We'll probably be demoing an Octane today, but all of these ways of thinking, all of the ways of where you plug this stuff in other material, in other renderers will be almost identical. You'll just have to do it in yours. So Chad will do his best to kind of say if anything's drastically different in another renderer. But we're going to be talking about the art of how to use make realistic materials as much as we are about the nodes. So I think no matter what renderer you use, you'll be able to learn something from today's discussion.
Yeah, it's just too hard to like try to, I'm only one man. I can't run 3 different renderers at the same time.
We need like bars coming off and then 2 skeletons next to you that are using,
Oh yeah, like those. Yeah,
like the dancer.
Yeah, I know. Not very many people are going to get that reference, but I got you. Yeah,
Christian says, what's the best approach to create normal maps for realistic materials? Chad, do you have any notes about normal maps?
I mean, it really kind of depends on what you want to do and what you're after, but there's programs like Substance Designer, Substance Alchemist, Substance Painter, that you can create normal maps from photos. You can create normal maps from procedurals. I believe there's even a few, it's been a long time since I used this, but there's I think an NVIDIA Photoshop plugin as well that will do normal map conversions, though it's been a really long time since I looked at it. But yeah, I mean, I'd say the best way is like trying to figure out what you're trying to build and then either go check out Substance Alchemist. It's actually really intuitive and it's really powerful, and that'll kind of get you an idea of like what's possible and what you might be able to create.
Awesome. Thank you guys for the questions. We got one here. We got, let's say Kosha says, why? I don't know why, but when I apply an emission texture to geometry in Arnold, it always looks flat. Can you give some tips to create realistic exposed lights? This is I've done this too. You add a emissive material and then it's just pure light, and you kind of, if I'm understanding the question right, it kind of overrides any reflection on it. And then so it doesn't look like a light bulb, let's say. It looks more like just like a lightsaber, that doesn't have the reflection highlights on it. So do you have any tips about that?
I mean, approach it realistically. Generally, when people apply like an emissive material to something, they're not putting enough energy into it, because an emissive material in real life, a light bulb, is pretty bright. So you shouldn't just set that to 1 and think that it's going to look realistic in your renderer. You should crank up the value and let the, to maybe even turn on some post effects glow or something to kind of make it feel actually emissive and bright. But a reflection on a light bulb isn't going to be visible unless the light bulb is off. And otherwise, the light itself is going to be blowing out your eyes, and your eyes are going to sort of expose themselves as much as they can. But it's still going to be blown out. And a lot of the times, I think people just aren't using any sort of color either. So light has a color temperature. So be aware of like, give it some color, not just like flat white, and give it some energy. Let it actually emit energy. I also don't really recommend using emissive materials to light scenes. I think that's a very sort of dangerous way to approach it, because you're just going to introduce a lot of fireflies and GI grain and all that sort of thing. So I always recommend faking it as much as you can, with area lights, point lights in the same place as the light, and let that be the thing that puts out the light, and let the texture just not, not contribute to diffuse bounces. But yeah, that's a whole other video. We should actually do that. It's not a bad idea.
That's a good idea. Thank you. Fried Pixels, good to see you, man. He says, I'm back on YouTube. I watched him go over to Twitch, ask a question, and then hop back.
Wow. That's,
you said there's more action over here on YouTube.
He's like jet setting on the chat.
Thanks for coming, man. Good to see you. Hey, this is an easy one to answer. Kelfire, can you show that Aces workflow setup someday? Yeah.
Can we?
If you use Octane, we have a video for you on YouTube. And I saw Rachel, by the way, put some links up here. Thank you, Rachel, by the way. Rachel's helping us out with some links. Hopefully she could find that Aces video on YouTube. We also have an in-depth Aces video on Plus, if you're a Plus member. And we also have a What the Heck is Aces video on YouTube as well, if you want to get started. So don't forget to check it out. It's essentially a color workflow. If anyone's been around long enough to remember when things went from regular gamma to linear in cinema, it kind of has that feel to it. It's like this new color unlock that just makes things look more realistic to how our eyes see things and how film reacts and stuff like that. So that's it's worth digging into. It's a little tough. It can be a little tricky to get set up sometimes, but it's way worth it. Definitely worth it. We made a video just to help you guys. All right. Thank you, Rachel, for the links. I saw
do us a favor too on the Aces tip. Do us a favor and hound Maxon to support Open Color IO.
They need
just
to add
for
it
me.
in Redshift.
Just for me, yeah.
Just
so that
add it in
if they need to add Open Color IO in Cinema, because it's like one of the only 3D programs left to have like not implement Open Color IO. And it's kind of a running joke. I'm kind of like the thorn in their side, the Aces thorn in their side. So let's keep that going.
They know what's coming. Like Chad's here, watch out. You're talking about Aces. It is really beautiful workflow. Definitely go check it out. Can you talk about Redshift on M1? I ordered my M1 Mac. I'm finally gonna test this out for you guys, and I'm gonna try Redshift. I think Octane has a version you could run on it. I'm gonna start to do some tests. I have a feeling my PC will still be way faster, and I'll end up doing most of my work on it. But this is interesting, and I'm excited to see what the M1 does. So look for either a video or something soon showing that off, and some other things I'm doing with PC as well. So I've been messing around with my setup a little bit, and we got some videos coming soon for you guys all around that.
I actually formed an opinion this morning about people still trying to use a Mac for 3D. But I don't know if you want to save that for another show, or if you want me to talk about what that is. It's going to probably trigger some people, but it's it kind of, you want me to just go into this idea? Like, it'll be 2 seconds.
Yeah. I need to hear this.
Here's the thing, man. I was thinking about it this morning, and I'm like, okay, so I mean, I apologize if this offends, but it kind of, so imagine a mechanic, right? Would you trust a mechanic who picked his tools that he's going to fix your car with based on how much he likes the invoice software that came with his shop, right? You're not going to you don't want somebody that picked their wrenches and stuff based on them loving the invoicing software that came with the tools.
No, bad take. This is already a bad take.
So
I like
no,
it.
just let me carry this idea through.
All right.
So, but if you trust it, you would trust, however, a mechanic that picked the tools right for the job that maybe suffers through some really bad invoicing software where it's pain in the butt to like bill people and get paid or whatever. But man, fixing that car has never been easier. Think about that.
Here's where I think you're wrong in the somewhat short term. Distributed rendering, render tokens, render farms, all of that stuff, like speed is the only reason. Speed is the only reason to use the PC, and cost.
No,
cost,
I would
right?
say not only speed, but tools. Like there's just way more GPU rendering available to you, and more features.
Yeah, I guess what I'm seeing is in the somewhat near future, you'll be able to use a Mac in a slower way, but in a much more beautiful way for the people that like Mac. Like whatever, if you're happy with your PC, of course, no problems.
You can't say more beautiful way.
Let's call it something that someone's more comfortable with. Let's just call it not something. Let's just call it something they're familiar with. Let's take it all the way back to just like the warm Mac hug. I'm more familiar, more comfortable on the Mac, so let's just call it that because you can't argue with that one. So now I think in the next year you'll be able to work on whatever platform you're comfortable with and render on a separate platform. That's all I'm saying. I think that is in the very near future on almost all the renderers, you'll be able to work on what you're comfortable with. And then when you need the power, you need the speed, it'll be much more distributed. You'll have the PC in the corner. You'll have the render farm tokens. You'll have a literal render. Like I think that's where that's headed. That's all I'm saying. I think it's going to be separate.
I think that's an elite kind of thing to be able to afford to have two separate computers that, you know, one's giving you the hug and one's giving you the render power.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think that's a valid, you know, workflow for sure. I'm just saying that, like, if your career is 3D, I would highly recommend going PC to do your work as a 3D artist.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. What I'm suggesting is right now that is a maybe elite workflow that you can set up for yourself depending on how much work you have and how much income you got coming in. What I'm saying is that is actually coming to more people. In other words, in the somewhat near future, you're going to be able to work on whatever computer you want. You could have a, you know, the same chip is going to be in the laptop as what's going to be in an iMac, right? You'll be able to work on those machines, get some work done, and as it scales up, you could do that, and then you could send it off to the render farm. You could send it off to somewhere else to get a lot of the juice going. That's what I'm foreseeing, and maybe we've always thought this is coming in the future, and maybe I'm rushing the future a little bit, but I think that's sooner.
I mean, distributed computing will happen someday, but right now it's not really a thing. It's very expensive. It's not super easy to set up, all that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, I do think that like right tool for the right job. And so when I see people, you know, trying to figure out like, well, how do I get this to work on an M1, or I just want to be like, okay, well, you know, I understand if you only have a Mac and you're trying to learn 3D, and like, absolutely do it. You know, that's great. Whatever you have to learn on, whatever computer you have at your disposal is the one you should use to learn 3D. But if you're looking to purchase a new machine and maybe drop some coin, I would highly recommend sticking with PC for the next until something changes drastically.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with it, but I think we're yeah. If you're the customer and you
totally
walk in,
hijacked this call.
yeah, I know. Let's talk about materials. But if you are the customer and you walk into your mechanic and they have the Mac sitting there, you're like, maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm charged. Maybe I'm getting charged too much.
Most definitely. But yeah,
Okay.
it's just, you know, it just hit me. I was like, well, why would you choose that for that? Like, I don't know, whatever. It's fine.
Joseph's got the answer. Cinema 4D for iOS, and then use render token to render the rest.
Yes, that's exactly what we're saying.
That's the future. Oh my goodness. Look, any live show long enough, we'll talk about Mac versus PC. It's just how it happens here in the world.
It just always goes that way.
All right, friends, let's get some more material questions ready. Thank you again for joining us. If you just joined us, we'll be talking about, we'll actually be doing a demo in Cinema 4D all about how to make more realistic materials in Cinema 4D. Really excited for that. And right now we're answering your questions, trying to lean towards some material questions, how to set up more realistic shots. That's what our goal here is on these live shows, to give you some of the tools and some of the ways to think to help your renders look more realistic. That's what we do here at Greyscalegorilla. That's what our tools, our materials, our training is all about, helping you guys make more beautiful stuff. And that's what we're here to try to answer right now. All right, we got the everyone talking about Mac versus PC now too. We see you did trigger everybody.
I
Dang
knew it. Sorry.
Sean's got the answer. It's
you never know what's going to happen on a live stream.
Oh, I missed it. He said C4D on the smartwatch. Perfect. Done. Done. Marcelo, what's up? What do you want to know about Redshift? Boom. We all of our materials and plugins and everything, we make sure it's all compatible with Redshift. We have quite a few tutorials up on YouTube and of course in Plus all about Redshift. We have a whole guide about it. And if you have a specific question, right now is the time to ask it. Drop a question. Please help us out too. Put a Q in front of it. It kind of helps out. It helps us find the questions. Christine's got a question here. She says, what's your recommended pipeline for assets built in Cinema 4D? Some materials created in Substance with clothing and soft surface. Some in Marvelous Designer. Yeah, well, like, what's a recommended pipeline for materials that you're making?
I mean, I'm not sure about the context of that question, but if you mean like pipeline as in making them, then that's different than the pipeline, obviously, of like using them. I'm guessing that you're saying what's recommended for assets built in Cinema 4D. I mean, they're completely different pipelines if you're talking about pipelines for creating all those different things, but pipelines for like using them and storing them and using and just, you know, having them at your disposal. I haven't really played much with Maxon's new asset browser thing in S24. I'm still on 23, so I'll recommend people on 23 use the content browser and learn about the content browser. And if you're in 24, learn about the new asset system. But be careful with the new asset system in S24 because it will actually database your files that you're putting in there, meaning that they're going to be using non-human readable language. Once you drag them into their system, they're going to be only available in that database. So be mindful of that. But yeah, that's kind of a bigger question. We should definitely, we could talk about pipeline in another stream for sure. But if you're talking about creating them, that's a completely different thing for each one of those little questions.
Awesome. Thank you for the question, Christine. We got one from Farzad. Says, are there going to be more Greyscalegorilla materials? Please. The answer is yes. Yes, they're coming. We mentioned it a little bit earlier, but within the next month or so, we have a new addition to Plus coming. There'll be quite a few things we're adding to Plus in the next month, and it'll include some new materials. So stay tuned for that. This is a good reminder. If you're a Plus member, obviously you're getting emails. You should be getting emails all about what's new in Plus, and it'll let you know. You could also always go and log in and check your dashboard, and we'll always have a button that says what's new if you're ever worried about what's just hit at the Greyscalegorilla Plus. If you're on the fence, you're looking at Plus, or you're just wondering exactly what's coming soon, or you're waiting for that next release before you hit the buy button, and you want to learn more when it comes out, just make a free Greyscalegorilla account. You could do that just by going up, clicking login, and it'll ask you to set up an email, password, make a free account. You get some Greyscalegorilla goodies, and you also are going to get notices when we have new stuff. You also get access to things like our intro to Cinema 4D training, some other goodies behind the scenes that we don't have out on YouTube and in other places. So we recently made this really easy. If you just go to either the intro to Cinema 4D page, it's really easy to find, or if you just go make a new account just by clicking login. And that way you'll know right away when the new release is out. We'll send you an email, show you exactly what's new in the latest version of Plus. So that might be a good way to start. All right, let's see here. Let's go with this one. If you have to compare Redshift with Octane, which one is easy to learn and intuitive to use? Chad, do you have an answer for that one?
I don't think I would classify either of them as easy to learn. I mean, if you've never messed with third-party rendering at all before, then that first one is always going to be a little difficult. But after that, they're all pretty easy because now you kind of know the language. But as far as intuitiveness, it really kind of depends. For me, I thought Redshift was more intuitive because I came from a renderer that was more like Redshift, which was Vray back in my 3ds Max days. And Arnold is very much like Redshift. So those two were pretty intuitive. I think Octane was a little bit less intuitive at first because they just did everything so differently. It being like a spectral renderer, just like deals with things in a slightly different way. Not to say that it was hard or difficult in any way. It just wasn't as, I had to spend a little bit more time understanding how it worked. But yeah, I think it really kind of depends on where you're coming from.
Yep, I agree. I don't think either of them were too difficult. Once you go through that process, like Chad said, and learn one, the rest are similar enough that you could kind of transfer your knowledge. And we have that too in Plus. If you remember, we have training to get you up to speed on all three of those renders. So Octane, Redshift, and Arnold. If you're looking at learning any one of them, I would just pick one for now, and even just go get the demo and go through one of the trainings and see how you feel. And so maybe there's one just like this Mac PC thing that like just speaks to you better or thinks the way you do. I would just say try them. I think they all have a demo at this point. And then that way you'll know how it works with your machine and compatibility and install and all that stuff. And then you can just make a decision based on how you like it, you know?
Yeah, compatibility is actually a really good point because I think a lot of people don't really think about that too much. And they kind of, especially I would say with Arnold GPU, like Arnold GPU, you got to have like a really good graphics card or multiple. So it's really kind of like do the research. If you're looking at one, see what kind of hardware they recommend, because otherwise you'll download a demo and it won't work or it'll be slow and you'll be pissed. And, it's always a good idea.
Awesome. We got another question here from Frederick. Asks, what are the differences between a bump map and a normal map? Chad, how would you describe those, and when would you use one and not the other?
Okay, so a bump map is basically going to fake displacement off the normal in one direction. And a normal map does the same thing in multiple directions. So if this is the surface normal, a bump map's only going to give you the height coming directly perpendicular off the surface. And a normal map is going to give you a little bit more of a 3D effect, which I'm doing like a very terrible job at like demonstrating normals. But the main takeaway is like bump maps are great for like, this is how I use them. Obviously everybody's got their own ways of doing things, but I use bump maps for like really fine details. So something of very, very, very kind of like tiny little fine bump map typey things, or maybe like a little bit of a raised type if you're trying to make it look like a decal or something like that. And I use normal maps for like larger kind of displaced things like, chiseled or pitted concrete or whatever, stuff like that. I kind of use normal maps for that and bump maps for those really fine details.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way. It's like normal map is a bump map in 3 dimensions.
Pretty much, yeah.
It has then that's why it has the colors too, because each color is a different X, Y, or Z, and they combine to create more fine detail. Now, it's important to know that neither of those will actually move any polygons or make any actual detail in your model or your object. They are only the visual on it. So you'll always know if you look right on the edge of something that's super finely detailed and it's smooth, that you'll have to use real displacement type of things to get. So it really only works best for things that are subtly bumpy. Or stuff that you don't see the edges of an object. It really, like if you're just looking at a plane and you use like a great normal map or a bump map, you can get away with it a lot because you don't see the edges of it.
Yep.
Thank you for the question. Let's keep going.
That's a good one.
That's a good one, dude. That's a classic material question. Any more like that? Keep them coming.
Keep these material questions coming, people. Come on.
I love it. Let's try this one. What use is UV node in Redshift? Is it something like UV set in Maya? Matt asked this question. Chad, do you have any thoughts about this one?
If you're talking about the newer UV projection node, oh, my dog is going crazy. Yeah, it's basically allows you to change the projection of that texture later in the stream of your nodes. It's not what I wish they would have made, which is a UV transform node, which is desperately needed in Redshift. And it really kind of like bums me out that they didn't put that in there. And what a UV transform node is, it allows you to basically have a string of like you're making a whole like diffuse texture with a bunch of different nodes. And at the end, you can put a UV transform node and rotate everything or scale everything or, repeat it 3 times or whatever. And that is what's really needed in Redshift. And I really hope that they implement something like that. Arnold has it. And it's like, I've just become so dependent on it that every time I have to use another renderer, I'm like, why do they not have this? This is silly. But yeah, anyway.
Awesome.
Hope that answers. I don't even know. But
thank you, Matt, for the question. So got some good questions today. Thank you, guys. Ryan says, is it weird that because of the Greyscalegorilla materials look so good and are so easy to use, I feel like I'm cheating? That's kind of the idea, Ryan. There are certain things on every project that an artist should need to have full control over and know how to make exactly from scratch. And there are thousands of other parts of every project where you just need it to look good. And what we try to do with our tools and materials and HDRIs and all that stuff, give you the tools that get you 90% of the way there so that you can spend your time on the most important part or the most unique part of whatever you're rendering. So that's really the goal for a lot of these materials are to do just that. Hey, I need a wood countertop. Sometimes you need to make something from scratch when you have the customer that is asking you to remake their wood countertop. But if you're showing off their coffee mug and that's what they're paying you for, then you cheating, like using your words and using our great looking wood countertop is exactly why we make this stuff, so that you could spend more time on what the client wants to pay attention to and what the client's needs are, and not on every little background, image and countertop and that stuff. Just, we give you the realistic materials to make that stuff look good so that you can focus on other parts of it. So that's why we're doing all this.
I mean, the simple thing is just don't tell anybody.
Yeah, and today we're actually going to show you how to take materials that are in the library and add some unique parts to them. So today I'm excited. We're going to jump into Cinema 4D here in the next, less than 20 minutes. And Chad's going to show you how to take some of our materials and your materials and add other details to them to not only make them unique and fit your scene, but also add little imperfections, little details to help make it look more realistic as well. So that'll kind of help that too. And what I'm excited as well is when people open up our materials and actually see how some of them are made, some ideas will actually, at least for me, I actually start to see how the sausage is made and see how you make some of these beautiful materials and start to apply it to some other things as well. So that's part of that process, is giving you beautiful stuff that you could also open up and see, and then maybe even combine stuff together to create new materials unique to your situation. All right, let's keep going here. Rachel with the links. Oh, I'm way behind. I gotta scroll. Thank you for the links, Rachel. Rachel is showing everybody where you can sign up for a free account, and you get a bunch of Greyscalegorilla goodies, and you become a Greyscalegorilla member. You join the email list. That lets us talk to you, show you some stuff behind the scenes that we don't even share publicly. So make sure you go there. Thank you for the question. Let's see here. Bump, bump, bump. I don't know the answer to this. This is good. So S24 has no Pro Renderer anymore. That is true. Pro Render, RIP.
RIP.
But they kept the PBR material option available. Can you explain why? Yeah, actually, I have a thought about it too. But do you know other uses of the PBR material other than Pro Render?
PBR material is not exclusive to ProRender. It's just a workflow for materials, physically based rendering. So it's just they just kept it because I think people probably still want to use it in physical with reflectance and whatnot. So,
yep, that was the only insight I have. Is it still works with physical? PBR is just another kind of standard, I guess I would call it, of way to set up your materials.
Yep.
And I've been experimenting more with GLTF and actually making 3D web files recently. And they actually use a PBR similar to PBR workflow, and they pull it directly from a PBR material. So I can actually set up my materials in the GLTF in Cinema 4D using the PBR option. It has a lot of acronyms. Whew, need a break after that one. All right, folks. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, same thing. Please explain PBR versus regular material. It's a different way of setting up a material. So there's many different ways to approach material creation, or even different, maps that combine in different ways. Long histories of different types of rendering, and PBR is is standard a good word to use? Like PBR is a across the board. When you see PBR, you're going to be a little bit thirsty, and then you're also going to know that this is a specific way that they want you to set up materials that mostly work across the board. So if you've ever downloaded a collection, like a material collection, where they make you put it all back together at the end, unlike the Greyscalegorilla materials, a lot of those are PBR workflows, and they snap together in a certain way. So it's kind of a standard, let's call it. It's not perfect, but it's a way to think of it. All right, let's see here. Yeah, we got another question about which one's best. I would just say do some research, check out our article about Arnold versus Octane versus Redshift. Chad wrote an awesome article. We keep that updated over on the website. Maybe Rachel will get a link for that. I appreciate it. And it's called what render should you use. So check that out. It'll help send you down the right rabbit hole, and then try them out. Make sure you get the demo.
They're all good.
Give it a shot. Yeah, all of those are good.
They're all really, really, really good. It's just about what you do, what kind of work you need to make, and then find out which one works for that.
Absolutely. Flareform, thank you for this. Says I just started using Redshift, coupled it with the Greyscalegorilla resources, produced some of the best client renders in the quickest time. That's like our whole goal. Flareform, thank you for that. That's like
screenshot that.
I know. Rachel, can you screenshot that? I feel like I'm gonna destroy the stream. That's amazing. That makes me happy. That's our goal here at Greyscalegorilla, to give you guys all the tools to do exactly that. Better looking renders, less time. That's the goal. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Let's see here. Do we have any? Ryan asks, do you have any plans for new tools outside of new materials and HDRIs? Yes, stay tuned for that as well. I don't think it'll be in the next release, which will be in the next month or so, but keep an eye out. We have new plugins in the works. We have updates to existing plugins in the works. We're really excited to get that stuff out to you guys. Really, 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 really excited. We've been playing with it, and I can't say anything else.
Don't do it.
Let's see here. Thank you for all the great questions today. This is great. Awesome. Oh, good. We got people who got their hoodies and their t-shirts from the last live stream.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
That's great. All right. Dun, dun. All right. This is a good specific question here. Shaza Duel. I always apologize if I get anyone's name wrong, but I do my best. What is the basic difference between the Octane Specular and Glossy shader? Chad, do you have any insight on that one?
Well, I'll just say that I only use the universal material now. So I kind of would not use either of those anymore, and I would just use the universal material, which is kind of their Uber shader. Until that is, they implement the Arnold standard surface material, which I'm really excited about. So Arnold created a standard surface material. It's kind of their version of the Uber material, and they're being really cool in letting other renderers develop their versions of it. So Clarice just announced that they are supporting the Arnold standard surface, I guess, standard. And Octane will soon, and I'm really excited about that. So, but for now, I recommend using the universal material. You can get everything you need out of that thing. But yeah, that's kind of my go-to. But yeah,
I've been experimenting and learning more about that too, and it's really powerful. There's some new words to learn in there that I didn't know what they meant. Maybe I still don't. There are some new concepts, let's call it, to think about when using the universal shader. But once you start to know where to look, it gets really powerful. I've been really enjoying it.
Yeah, I think I wrote down some stuff for a toy, some suggestions. I do think their Uber material there is just like got way too many things in it. It's really, there's a lot of stuff in there. And if you look at that node, it's like intimidating because there's just an endless string of things you can plug in. I think they could do a better job of like the UX on that and making it a little bit less intimidating.
I'm not scrolled down far enough to get to Adam's question, but I want to make sure I answer your question, Adam. I see it on the screen, but I'm not there in the chat yet. So when I get there, don't let me forget about Adam's question there on the screen.
Adam's question, okay.
But before we get there, we got a few more we're going through here. Christian, it's not quite kind of a question. Hey, I guess so. How to add graffiti images to Greyscalegorilla Materials. This is something I've been running into more. It's like putting a sticker on something, putting graffiti on something, taking a material and placing something specific in just the right place. I do know that we have a video on Plus about with the skateboard and the stickers. Was that Redshift, Chad?
Yeah, that's Redshift. Yeah.
So if you use Redshift, there's a video that shows you how to do it. Honestly, this is probably something we should do across the board for all the renderers, like show that workflow. So I'm guessing it's probably specific to each workflow, and you got to set up that sticker and put it in the nodes. And
well, I'll just kind of blow your mind a little bit on that, because really the I think a lot of the people that maybe aren't super familiar with nodes and materials and stuff, that can be an intimidating idea of like, well, how do I add a graffiti image to this, wall material, whatever. So think about it. It's the same exact principles as Photoshop, right? So if you had a photo of a brick wall and you needed to put a graffiti onto that brick wall, you would have your graffiti image and a matte, or it would be a PNG. So the matte's kind of built into it, and you would put it on a layer in Photoshop and you're done. Like, there you go. You got your graffiti. It's the same exact principle in materials. So your diffuse that's going into whatever material that you're in, you just need to put a layer node. Usually, I think all of them do have a version of a layer node, which is basically kind of the layer node is kind of like Photoshop in the nodes. It has like transfer modes and opacity and a little mask input. So then you just take your graffiti PNG and you put it in there, and you put the matte going into the mask input, and you're good to go. It's really not as hard as you think.
Awesome. Yeah, I think some demos too. We're actually working on some ideas for the blog and for Plus that right now we're calling like cheat sheets, that I think this might be a good one to build, Chad.
Yeah.
We haven't quite put those out yet, but we're trying to find, there's setups. Well, setups is probably another good word to call this thing, but what are the node setups you need to pull off this effect? And it's slightly different in all the renderers. We're trying to find a way to give you guys almost like a recipe card to say, this is how you do it. So that might be a good example for that one.
Yeah, we should definitely write that down.
Thank you for the question. We got another one here. Hey, Nick and Chad, you might have already touched on this. Lost connection for a while. Can you discuss what the Greyscalegorilla Plus Team Render farm stuff I've been seeing on your website is all about? Thanks. Yeah. What we did was we recently added unlimited team render nodes to any Greyscalegorilla Plus license. So if you use Team Render, and especially specifically if you use Team Render on a render-only Team Render node, what we didn't want to do was make you buy an extra license just to render, like we talked about earlier, this idea of working on one machine and then distributed rendering as kind of the future of how this happens. we didn't think that it was fair to make you buy a new license just for your render farm. So what we did was we allowed unlimited Team Render node installation of our plugins, and then the materials take care of themselves. Those will transfer over, but all the plugins can be installed on all of your distributed rendering nodes. So some people mentioned they thought maybe we had a render node in our house or something that we're giving you access to. That is not the case. We do not have that set up. So let's be clear right now. What this is your extra machines, your render farm, if you have one at home or an extra machine, or some people use their old machine, or some people, you know, have an extra machine, you're now able to install this stuff on your render nodes. And then, of course, if you use Plus on multiple machines, you will need an extra license for that. So that's separate. But if you just render on an extra machine, we didn't want to have you buy an extra license just for that. So that's what that is. If you have any extra questions too, or confused about it or anything else, hit up our support. They'll take care of you as well. But hopefully that's a little bit more specific. Quick question here. When will Greyscalegorilla Plus apps work with R24? We are currently fully up to date with R24, ready to rock. So if you are a Plus member, you've been ready, I think maybe the day of or the day after 24 came out. Plus members had almost instant access to the latest version. And we try to keep that as short as possible. And then as soon as that launches, we work on the perpetual ones. Those took an extra week or so, but those are all up to date. So no matter what plugin you've purchased from us, you have a version up through R24 ready to rock. And specifically, Plus is compatible from R20 through R24 right now. So no matter which one you use. All right, Jesse, thank you for that question. All right, I got to catch up here. I'm 10 minutes in the past here when it comes to questions. I'm going to try to do a little lightning round here as we get closer to jumping into Cinema 4D. So I'm going to try to answer as many as we can here. As quickly as we can. So let's do a quick lightning round, and we won't forget about Adam's question, which is coming right up. I see it right here. Let's see. Rachel's like, they're gonna say it. They're gonna say too much about the next release. Beans, as Sean says, Beans collection would be good. Okay, Adam's question. Thank you, Adam. Adam says, when copying an object with Greyscalegorilla Octane Everyday Materials on them from one scene to another, they seem to break. Worn plastic loses connection. Any idea to deal with this? I haven't seen this, but I wanted to check with you, Chad. Is this something that you've seen that we can talk about, or is this like a technical issue we should talk to support or something?
Well, our materials aren't doing anything proprietary. They're just texture maps and dry, just like any other material in Octane. So that sounds like it might be an Octane issue. I would hit up the Octane forum and talk it over with them, see what that means. It just might be that's how it is. I know there's a lot of weird quirks with Octane. But yeah, I don't believe it could be tied to anything that we're doing, since we're not doing anything proprietary there.
Yeah, I'll say too, if you're using the before Plus version of the material collections, that was a lot more specific on the way that you had to set it up and install it and tell Cinema where your materials are. And so I would double check if you've purchased Everyday Material Collection before Plus, that you have it installed properly and that Cinema 4D sees your specific file structure. But if you're in Plus, that's all automatic now. You don't have to do any of that except hit install, and you have that's all basically set up for you. You just pick one folder to install all this stuff, and we take care of the rest. So I would say if it's the pre-Plus version where it was a little bit more a lot more complicated to install, really, I would just double check that process or hit up support. But if not, if you're using the Plus version, it sounds like it might be an Octane issue. All right. All right, let's do a few more lightning round Q&As, and then we're going to jump into Cinema 4D, and Chad's going to show us specifically some little tips, tricks, how to make more realistic materials right within Cinema 4D. This will be fun. Let's catch up here with some more questions. Good. Let's see here. All right, here's a good one. Any last questions? Throw them up in the chat, guys. We'll do a lightning round and we'll hop into Cinema 4D. Let's see. We got GH Sync asking or GHSNYC. That's maybe what I'm thinking.
I always get entertained by watching you say the names.
You gotta try. Will Redshift work with Team Render and render nodes, or do we need to get another Redshift license for that? I don't know the answer to that.
You do. You need another license.
You need a separate license for any render node for Redshift.
That's not your. Well, let me rephrase that. The computer that you have licensed is good. If you want to add other computers, yeah, you're going to need licenses for those computers.
Okay. He says Glenn. Thanks for the question, Glenn. I appreciate it.
There you go.
All right. Let's see here. Getting toward the end here. We're going to jump into Cinema 4D in just a minute. Stick around. Let's see here. Any tips for using subsurface scattering materials? I have my go-to workflow in Octane, but I'm actually interested. Chad, what's your go-to first in Octane? Because I need to know, but also in general, just to help answer this question for everybody.
If I'm going to do subsurface, it's going to be an Arnold. I'm not going to use Redshift subsurface. I hate it. I just really don't like the way it looks, and it's really cumbersome to work with. Arnold's got the most intuitive subsurface. I think the new Octane random walk in the universal material is really close to what I could get in Arnold. But I still, if I need to do a subsurface render, like there's a couple renders on my foundation, a couple NFTs I made, that I'm just using Arnold because it's got just the most beautiful looking subsurface. So Octane's a close second. Redshift, that ain't it, Chief.
That's not the dude. Talk about elite, man. We got you. Just choose your renderer, based on. I got my Mac and my PC. Well, we're idiots at this point. Yeah, no, I've struggled to get good subsurface in Redshift. I mean, it's definitely better than like physical where I came from, so it's definitely looked nice. But once you see Arnold or Octane too, if you do a ton of that subsurface, I feel like Octane's got like glass figured out, Arnold's got subsurface figured out, and then Redshift has like
plastic figured
out, and getting it set up easy and tied into Cinema a little tighter. So they all have their little like goods and bads. So that's another way that a lot of artists are working. More and more artists are saying and picking their renderer based on the type of project. So it goes back to your analogy, I think, picking the right tool for the job.
Yeah, and Sean in the chat has a really good point. Like with subsurface, scale is like incredibly important because the whole idea of subsurface is light is penetrating a surface and bouncing around in there. So if you are not working in a physically real scale, then you're going to have a hard time trying to get it to look real because you're trying to maybe make it feel smaller when you're dealing with a very large scene. And so scale is very important. What's great about the way Arnold does it is it's literally like it gives you a radius of like how far down do you want the light to go? Basically, that's really the only setting beyond color. And you can say, well, I want it to, it's a glass of milk. So light penetrates like maybe 4 centimeters or something like that. And it just immediately looks like milk if you set it up physically correct. The other ones are not as easy to do that because there are all these like strange settings, Redshift especially. That's why the random walk and the simpler approach is better because you just are not fighting these sliders as much.
What's your Octane node of choice? Random walk
for yeah, I mean the new Octane random walk is the close second to Arnold's. It's not quite as good yet, but it's pretty close.
All right, that's what I use. I just want to make sure I wasn't doing it wrong.
Yeah, random walk. I guess random walk. Yeah, I took that. I shouldn't assume like random walk. Yes, that's what you want.
Thanks for the question. Zach says, is Chad going to post anything on Hic Et Nunc? Have you played with this site yet, Chad?
I've just been watching a few people post on there. The first person that even told me about it was my friend Cody. and I didn't really know anything about it. I've been like slowing down on the NFT stuff just because I've been so busy trying to get stuff done here, and as summer approaches, doing more stuff with friends, and I'm vaccinated now, so I'm going out and seeing people.
Right.
So I haven't had a whole lot of time to mess around with it, but yeah, it seems interesting. I'm watching it for sure. I know you're playing around in it quite a bit.
Yeah, I've been having a blast with it. I've been seeing like EJ was probably the first person I saw talking more about it. And what I love about it is well, the first thing is it's way less expensive to mint stuff. And to me, it's almost like if you're either intimidated or want to see what this NFT space is all about, and you're looking at these prices, like I don't want to buy stuff for thousands of dollars. Hic Et Nunc is an interesting place that's very lightweight. It's very inexpensive to get started, and it allows you to collect art from your friends. At least for me, it's very fun to say EJ has something, or like Tuna, who helped me set this thing up, kind of showed me how to get my wallet set up and all that. I see a piece from him, or from like Mike Campo or something, like friends of mine, like neighbors of mine that are making cool pieces, and you could grab stuff for 5, 10, 20 bucks, whatever. And it's been really fun. And secondarily, the other interesting part is you can use GLTF files directly in there and mint them, and you could actually go in and click and rotate around 3D objects, which I think is an interesting way to think about your art. It's not a flat rendered scene anymore. You can actually import a model for it, to use a kind of a simpler word, import a model and mint it, and people could spin around it. So you get some really cool artwork in there, a lot of hand painted stuff from VR, and it's interesting. So check it out. It's confusing. It's not intuitive to use. Yeah. It's it breaks all the time. But if you can look past that stuff and think of it as like a fun art project that allows you to collect work from your friends, it becomes really fun. If you're interested in it, I've been playing with it. Follow me on Twitter. I've been talking a little bit about it. And I have links in my Twitter to look at the stuff that I've minted. And you can check out my collection as well and see some of the stuff that I've purchased from other friends and all that. So if you've posted on it, let me know. Hop on Twitter and tweet at me. It's been something I've been playing with over the last couple weeks. So good question. Thank you. Look at that. See, we talked about NFTs too. So it's officially a live show. Let's do it. All right, a couple more questions. We'll get ready to hop into cinema. Chad, you ready here in just a few minutes?
Sure.
Yeah, another question about GLTFs. I've been playing more with them for sure. My latest Hic Et Nunc, even the name, dude, I can't.
Yeah, it's weird.
Anyway, I just got to learn how to pronounce it. I think I'm saying it right. Check out my latest thing. It's a GLTF essentially. All right, bump. Let's see here. Adam's. Oh, good. Adam's got something I could buy. See, he's shilling. I love it, dude. We hit it. Hey, Andy's good to see you. All right, let's see here. Next question. All right, I think we did it. We answered all the questions. Let's hop into Cinema 4D, and we are going to talk about how to make. Wait, let me stretch out. Let me turn off this thing. We might repost this as a separate bit. So there's a little behind the scenes. Get ready for the show. Ready? Guys, we are ready to hop into Cinema 4D, and Chad's going to show us how to make more realistic materials inside of Cinema 4D, and approach making more realistic materials and adding those subtle details that make something go from looking 3D and plastic into all of a sudden looking more realistic. So Chad, take it away, man. I gotta do a screen share. Can you do that locally, or do I have to send you something?
I think you just have to okay it.
Okay, here we go.
I think.
You ready, buddy?
Yeah, let's try it.
I'm clicking. And I gotta get rid of the chat away. I'm gonna go full screen here. Oh, look at and then if we're in the way, I think we're fine down in the bottom, but I think we're gonna be ready. I'm gonna get rid of this as well. Bump. In the upper right, hide it. show.
Let's see what this
We did it.
does to.
Here we are in Cinema 4D. Chad, take it away. Let's talk about this scene. Tell us what's going on, and then maybe we'll jump in and maybe start to try to make something from scratch or talk about some of the nodes that you have in here. So walk us.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
So this model, I just picked it up from Turbo Squid because I just think it looks really cool, and it's UV'd, which is great. So it's going to be pretty easy to demo stuff on. But yeah, so this scene just came in. I'm not sure how much of this will come through the stream with compression and whatnot, but
it's looking pretty good.
It was it's obviously a pretty clean model of like this robot kind of geisha model face from like Ghost in the Shell. And I just used a couple of different techniques to make it look a little bit more worn and torn, some scratches, some fingerprints, stuff like that. And really, when I'm approaching a surface like this, I try to just like imagine it piece by piece and kind of build it up layer by layer. And a lot of the techniques that I use are just basically compositing techniques. And if you know anything about compositing, then you already have a leg up when it comes to material creation, because it's just a lot of the same ideas that you're going to use in compositing that you use in creating materials. So if we were to like isolate, let's just like grab, I have a clean version of this head that I'm just going to hide this other one. And we're going to throw just a generic universal material onto this head clean, and immediately let's just go ahead and activate that. Let's make sure this is going cool. All right, so let me just make sure that this is actually hooked up properly.
You know I love when
we go.
Start from scratch, Chad. That node tree was, I gotta tell you, intimidating right up front.
Don't be intimidated. It's really not that bad. So one thing that, you know, whenever I'm creating a new Octane universal material, one annoying thing that I've spoken to them about is that it defaults with metalness all the way up, which basically makes it like chrome. So I usually, if I'm doing a dielectric material being something like plastic, I'm going to bring that metalness down to 0. And think of albedo as a diffuse color. That's the same thing. It means the same thing. So if I bring that down to like, let's say like a gray, we're now going to be able to see these highlights a lot better. So what I'm going to do is we're going to start to mess up this material a little bit and kind of make it feel, yeah.
Real quick. I want to do this full screen because it looks better, but our little videos are in the way of your material thing down there.
Okay.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Can you cheat?
Oh, yeah,
cheat,
I see.
Like over to the left, maybe. Yeah, exactly.
Let's see.
Grab over. I just want to make sure because
because it's literally like blocking this whole thing, right? Like that's what the problem is. Here, you know what? I'll raise it up. Is that better? I'm watching myself over on YouTube.
That should do it. And then try to move like that right bar to the left, like just between us two. Yeah, somewhere there. Like, yeah, I think enough to at least let you see like where he's clicking and all that. Okay, sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, let me know.
I just want to make sure
if I click, if I click something like down here, just let me know. I'll tell you what it was. All right, so I usually will start with like, if I'm going to do that same kind of material without the, well, we can bring in the sticker, I guess, but actually, you know what? Let's just start from scratch. Let's just do it the right way. So generally when I'm doing something like this, and I know that I'm going to have lots of layers to my material, I'm going to actually start it with a composite material instead. So I'm going to start this with a composite material, throw that onto the head there. And then I'm going to grab that composite material, get active. And then I'm going to go to material 1 and say add material. Now notice it doesn't create an Octane universal material right off the bat. It creates I believe it's just going to be a glossy material. So just come over to the material type under the basic tab, change that to universal. Now we have a nice universal material. What's weird is that you notice when I created the universal material on its own, it had metalness all the way up to 1 and it was chrome. For some reason, when you create it with a composite material, it doesn't do that. So that's just a weird thing that it does. All right, so let's jump into the albedo color and just like bring that pretty far down, something like that. Okay. I'm going to steal the face color the bitmap that came with the model, just so that we have something to look at in the albedo of our face. Otherwise, it'll be kind of boring. Okay, so let's go ahead and add some stuff to this. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is probably make this not so perfectly clean. We need to add some smudges to this because anything like this, it's going to be handled. It's going to be, we want it to make it look worn. Doesn't need to look brand new. And one trick that I like to do if I'm working with a very bright material like this, where it's not exactly easy to see specular roughness, I'm just going to darken it by bringing the power down quite a bit. And obviously this isn't what we want it to look like for final, but it's just going to help us understand what the hell we're doing with the roughness.
Just so you can see the reflections easier.
Exactly. So you want to be able to like see what you're doing, and then you can bring that back up. So I'm going to jump over to the Greyscalegorilla Plus library, and in our texture tab, we have a whole set of scratches and a whole set of smudges. So I'm not going to do scratches in this roughness. I want to do smudges because I think that's really what I want to use for that roughness. So I'm just going to drag this one texture over on top of the Octane node editor, and then plop it down inside of Octane and my little material that I've got going here. And if we connect this directly up to the roughness, it's just going to completely go rough. It's going to go, completely rough. And the reason, if I solo this, I'm just right clicking this node and hitting solo. Maybe you can't solo nodes in a, let's see, maybe I just didn't do the right node.
In a blended material.
There we go. Okay, so I'm soloing this roughness. And if we're just using it as is, that's not really going to do anything for us. It's just way too rough. If a value of 0 means it's completely shiny and a value of 1 in the map means that it's completely rough, then we really don't have a lot of control. We can come in here and adjust the power. We can adjust the gamma. Maybe we want to bring that to a linear, which is probably what you want to do for this. But we need more control. And the way that you're going to do that, and I'm just hitting tab here, I'm going to grab an Octane gradient. And we're just going to grab an Octane gradient, and we're going to pull this roughness directly into the texture input of that gradient, and we're going to take the output of that gradient and put it into the roughness. And what that's going to do is it's going to remap the values of our smudge map here into this gradient. And what that's going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to clamp it down if we want to clamp it. We can also clamp the whites in. We can also take that white value and bring it down maybe a little bit. So maybe somewhere like in here, and maybe we want to raise the black value up a little bit. Now let's go ahead and look at that output to our material. And again, it's going to be pretty subtle. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here so you can see it on her forehead. But this most of the time, honestly, when I'm using surface imperfection maps, I'm connecting them to a gradient just so I have that intuitive control over how I want it to look. So I can come in here and spread that out a little bit by bringing the black level down, or maybe I want to like clamp it really harshly. So we just kind of see these like wet smudge marks happening in a bit more of a tighter kind of fashion. So, all right, I'm not really vibing on that particular texture. So I'm going to grab a different one. I'm going to jump over to the plus library here. Let's change the size to large so that we can see them a little bit better. And I'm going to grab 45, bring that in, and we're going to plug it right into that same gradient and just see how that feels. This is a bit more like a handprint. In fact, let's go ahead and just solo this so we can see it. This is clamped way too much, so let's bring that down. There we go. And I'm also going to scale this a little bit. So I'm going to grab a UV transform on that and change the scale to like maybe 2, I think. I want to go that way. Oop, not 1, not 0, not negative. All right, that's pretty good. Maybe 1.5.
Ooh, I like that one.
Yeah, so now you can kind of like get a better idea of what's going on here. Let's disable that. All right, so now we have like a very like smudged up face mask. So let's bring our albedo value back up to 1. So now we can see it kind of contributed. I might actually just cheat this down a little bit just because. All right, so it's subtle, but it's there. I'm not sure how much of it's coming through, but that's the nature of doing materials. Everything is subtle. Of course, broad stroke, big stuff like, dents and really big stuff that would mess up the surface, you got to go a little heavy handed with it. But when it comes to roughness, I try to be pretty subtle with it. So because you just don't want it to be distracting. That's like the main takeaway.
Yeah, that was something that I struggled with, because when I first started doing this, would just put the map directly into roughness, just to play around with some of these imperfection maps and stuff, and it was too heavy, right? And the only control you had at that point was to go into the image texture and turn down the power.
Yeah.
But then you don't get that real subtle detail, like, it might be obvious for some of us that have worked with these black and white maps a lot, but if you haven't messed around with these black and white maps, essentially you have a black value and a white value. Chad, can you go back to where it was you soloed it and all the paint marks were just like across the face? I think it might be a good way to talk about this. Again, I know some of us that do a lot of this know this, but it's important to anybody learning and maybe intimidated by all this stuff to know what's going on. So these black and white maps, which are the imperfection maps with Greyscalegorilla Plus, and if you can also find other black and white maps if you want to experiment with this. These are just extra high res. I'm going to pimp our stuff for a second. They look really great. Okay. So what you're looking at is a black and white map on the roughness channel. And what it's telling the roughness channel is, instead of being, usually the roughness channel lets you dial from 0 roughness to complete roughness. And all that is how blurry your reflection is. What this map is doing is telling the surface to be differently rough based on the black and white value. So Chad's demonstrating without an imperfection map or a black and white map, you get this effect, which is fully reflective, just like he's showing, versus fully rough, which gives you more of a brushed look. But it is uniform across the entire material. So now when Chad hooks this back up and you include a surface imperfection, you now are getting different values based on the black and white. So in this case, I think black is 0 and white is fully rough. Is that correct, Chad?
That's correct. Yep.
And you can also invert that if you want to invert it using I think the gradient tool, of course, lets you reverse the knots and invert it. So now the black is white and white is black, and it reverses the bump. So all of these imperfections, when you look at the surface imperfections and you're like, what's the difference between all these? They all bring out a subtly different type of effect on your material like that. So I just wanted to take a step back and explain that, because I know sometimes we could just rush right into this stuff. But anytime you see those black and white maps, that's what it's doing. It's affecting values in different ways. All right.
Exactly. Yeah. Feel free to just stop me at any point and do that, because I will sometimes get into a role and just start to go. Okay. So we've kind of added some roughness to our mask material. Now maybe we want to add a little bit of dirt. Maybe we want this to feel like it's been around the block a few times. So we might want to create a little bit of dirt. So I'm going to go into my composite material, and we could just add some dirt to the diffuse of this texture, like the texture that has the circle and the eyes. And we could do the dirt there, but what that's going to do is it's not going to really allow us an easy way to change the roughness of that dirt, because dirt's not going to be shiny. Dirt's going to be very rough, and it's going to have a different surface property than our mask, which is why I use a composite material for something like this. So in material 2, I'll add another material, and we'll jump down into the basic, and we'll change it to universal. And I'm going to solo this just so we can see it a little bit better. We're going to bring the specular all the way down to 0, and the albedo is going to be almost black. We're going to make it a very dark kind of dirt. And I think we'll turn the spec on. I thought I was going to want it off, but I'm just going to make it very, very rough. And I'm just going to bring the spec down. I'm just trying to create something that's going to be our dirt. Then we're just going to use, again, it's just like Photoshop. We're going to use our same technique that we used for the roughness to reveal the dirt on top of our model. And the reason that I chose a completely different material is because we could use a completely different specular. We could have a different roughness, a different specular level. So what I'll do is I'll just duplicate. I'm just holding down Control and dragging. I'll duplicate this whole situation out down here. I am going to change this map. And I think the way I'm going to do that, actually, I will delete these. I'll leave the gradient. I'm going to jump back. Go ahead. You got something?
Yeah, 2 things. How did you do the duplicate? Just for, I'm asking for a friend.
Yeah. Just hold, select anything, hold down control, and then just drag off
Perfect.
like that. That's all you got
Awesome.
to do. Okay, so let's jump back over to the plus library, textures. We're going to do smudges again, but this time I'm going to find some fingerprint smudges. Let's grab this, pull it in, and go ahead and throw that into our gradient and put this right into, actually, I'm going to throw this into material to mask. And one thing I will do is I'm going to reset this gradient. So I'm right clicking on the word gradient and resetting to default. All right, let's unsolo that node that we had before. And immediately we have fingerprints happening on our face. I do want to change the transform though, because it's going to be too small. And again, this is pretty rad. Actually, that is a fingerprint right there. You can see the fingerprints right here. It's too opaque though. This is like it's like almost like this face mask was like dropped in graphite or something. So I will just come into that layer, or sorry, into this gradient that's driving that mask, right? Again, it's like Photoshop techniques. I'm just going to adjust the white strength of this, which is going to basically be like a matte in Photoshop. So if I bring this down, you're going to start to see that dirt subside a little bit. It's not as opaque. I'm basically just changing the opacity of that dirt. So I might go a little heavy-handed just so the stream can actually see it. We'll let that kind of resolve for a second. But right there, we have a dirt added to our material. It's got a completely different reflection property. So if we were to bring that texture of that face back down to 0, just so we could kind of like, again, visualize what we've got going on, you can see where the dirt is, the diffuse is much more broad. You can see it happening here and a little bit in here. So it's very much the reason that I kind of go this route is because I like to have that. I like to just make it look more realistic this way.
We got a quick question about this Octane blended material. What is it called?
Composite?
Yeah, the composite material. Is it similar to a mix shader in Pravid's asking, is it similar to a mix shader in Arnold?
Yeah, so in Arnold, you want to use a mix shader for sure. Like you're absolutely right. And in Redshift, I believe it's a blend material. So these techniques are completely one-to-one in all 3 renderers. So we're not doing anything in here that is specific to Octane.
Yep, and all 3 of them would be in the roughness channel. All 3 of them have a gradient effector that lets you node that lets you do this, and then all 3 of them will let you just drag your material from the plus library right in there, and it'll just add it right away, just like Chad did. So the blend material, that name is slightly different in all of them, but the fundamental works in all 3 of the renderers. So if you're trying to follow along.
Yeah, that's the beauty of PBR. So you might notice the word albedo is a weird word. Basically, it's diffuse. So in the other renderers, this is diffuse. It's just another word for diffuse. That's the only kind of difference. But a PBR workflow is the same. Roughness is the same. Diffuse albedo equals the same thing. Metalness, metallic, same thing. So yeah, that's just how it goes. But okay, so I know we're running kind of long, so I'll do one more layer to this, which is we kind of want to make this look like it's painted on metal. So we're going to reveal some metal scratches. We're going to have some scratches that are going to scratch through this paint and reveal some metal underneath it. So let's go ahead and just do that really simply here. Let's grab another material. I'll go to material number 3. We're going to add a material and jump into that material. And this one, again, I'm going to use a universal. Boom. And let's solo this one just so that we can see it. We'll keep this one pretty simple because I know we're running short on time. So metalness all the way up, and with the albedo all the way at 1, we're going to have a perfectly chrome object here. So I don't want it to be perfectly chrome. I want it to kind of look like iron or something like that. So I'll bring the roughness up just so that specular isn't completely sharp. And I'll bring the albedo down, which is just anytime you're bringing the color value of the diffuse down and you have metalness up, it's going to make the metal darker. So you can see I could make the metal very dark, which essentially kind of is getting rid of the metalness actually, but we just want to kind of make it look a little bit like dark iron, maybe not that rough maybe something like this. All right, so this is what we're going to reveal in our next mask, in our material 3 mask. So let's unsolo this. You can see we don't see anything yet because we don't have anything in that mask. Let's jump back over to the plus library, go to the scratches, and we'll find something that's fairly subtle. Or actually, you know what? Let's grab something that's pretty crazy, and then we can always adjust it. All right, grab that scratch. Let's hold down tab, type in gradient, grab an octane gradient, push this into the octane gradient, and let's go ahead and throw this into our material 3 mask. There we go. And now we are revealing metal underneath. Again, we want to adjust the UV transform because this UVs are a little bit on the big side. And now we can just, well, let's just bask in that glory. That looks pretty sick already.
That looks cool.
But let's go ahead and clamp this down a little bit because maybe we don't want all those super fine scratches. We just want some of those like bigger scratches.
Can you scroll up just a bit on your gradient? You're covering it just a little bit.
How's that?
Yeah, that's perfect. I just wanted to mention, you know, when it comes to, so we talked about black and white, and that white is essentially the more white that shows through on this map, the more scratch reveals the metal below. So what Chad just did is raise up the black level more to the middle to clamp some of those lower black values and essentially reduce the amount of scratches that you see and only reveal the ones that were super, super bright. So can you move that back down real quick, Chad? Just so that your black point.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So see how there's more there. And if he wanted to go the other way and reveal even more scratches, he can go back to that gradient and move the white point down, for example, and that'll show a ton of metal below. So it's important to know, and the reason I'm stopping and showing this is sometimes you'll pull a map in. Oh, look at how weird that looks, so crazy. So sometimes you'll bring a map in or one of our surface imperfections, and you're like, it's almost right, but it's just a little bit too much. Well, you don't have to go search for another map. What you might be missing is this gradient node, or somebody in the chat. Let me make sure I give them the Matthew Zipper, I think, said it. In Redshift, it's called the ramp node. Lets you do these things and dial in that specific look to get exactly what you're going for. So you have a lot more control rather than just trying different maps. You can actually dial in the exact amount that you're going for. So I just wanted to kind of walk through that because it is important, and it helps take something that's a little bit heavy-handed and dial it in just right. That's the stuff that really helps sell the look, you know?
Yep, totally. So, but yeah, I mean, we're basically using compositing techniques. We're using masks and mats, and we're clamping stuff just like you would in compositing. So it's very, very, very similar. So last thing I want to do is we're gonna. Oops, I didn't mean to disconnect that. Stand by. Last thing I wanted to do was to actually layer up a couple of different of these scratch maps just to get a little bit more variation. So I'm going to jump back over to the plus library, and we're going to find a scratch that's a little bit more fine. So let's try scratches 06. We're going to drop that down. And what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing. I'm just going to control click this gradient off like this, and we're going to plop it in there. All right, now I'm going to quiz you, Nick. All right, so if I wanted to add these scratches that I've got on this map over on top of this one before it gets put into this as a mask, what should I grab?
And add. So you want to add one what node? Gosh, I never know.
You said it.
Is it add node?
Yeah. Add.
Look at that. Add
node. Look at that. It's in addition. So what we're going to be doing is we're taking the value of one gradient and adding it to the next, right? So if my hand would not be so shaky for some reason, I think I drank too much coffee. Let's toss that into our material. Now we can go ahead and solo this node out, and let's make sure the IPR is running. And let's see, it's not wanting to solo that. There we go. Whoa, something freaked out there.
It's showing you like half of it.
Yeah, weird. All right, so here we go. It's working now. Let's grab another UV transform off of that, and again do our little trick here, and let's go make sure that this is actually working properly. Okay, so this one is clamped way too much. That's the problem. All right, so let's give this one a little bit more space and scale. So this one has a bunch of like really kind of subtle, tiny scratches. And what we're doing is we're adding that to our other scratches. You see that? See what happened there? It kind of happened pretty fast because of the IPR. But so we're just kind of using Photoshop techniques or compositing techniques to make this happen. Let's go ahead and unsolo this so we can see its contribution. I'm not sure what happened here, but I feel like our material got broke somehow. Material
like
1
lost its reflection.
Yeah, material 2, material 3. I feel like maybe this is the problem. Let's see here. Let's see if we can troubleshoot this. Yeah, for some reason, I think our albedo got... what the hell just happened? If anybody in the chat knows what the hell I just did, then let me know, because I do not know what just happened there. All right, we still have that. I feel like this material got borked somehow.
Yeah, even the reflection from your main thing got broken.
Yeah, it's weird. Is this one working? Let's see. Oh, you know what? I think it was the I think it's this layer that's broken. So this is metalness, albedo's up, metalness.
I'm just not seeing any reflections, Chad.
Yeah, I don't know what the
any
hell.
of them.
Oh yeah, that's true. Dude, maybe I accidentally, let's see.
Or
I'm just gonna, sometimes I'll go into preview mode and bounce out and that'll fix it, but
the HDR got changed or something?
I don't think so. Like, let me unhide my finished model. I think we must be in like some mode. Okay, that's super strange. Are we in like some weird mode? If anybody knows what we're encountering here, it kind of looks like I may have accidentally hit a hotkey that's like only showing us a specific part of the render. That's the only thing I could think of. Well,
Yeah,
here, you know what? I'm just gonna revert back because we'll just open up the let's see if that fixes it.
Yeah, so as you do that, I wanted to say everybody remembered, or at least I remember, when Chad opened that original material node channel, and I was like, whoa, that's a lot of nodes. Well,
but now they make sense though, right?
Now it actually makes a lot of sense. Like, that is a lot of nodes. But if we pay attention, or if we rewatch what Chad just did, this actually makes a lot more sense. There's layered materials that feed into gradients. I see them right in your node manager here, and then you're feeding 3 different things. You basically recreated all that, and if you follow those lines back, it actually, at least for me, makes a lot more sense. And I see in one case you shared the same scratch map and split it off into 2 materials. Can you show that and show maybe why you did that too?
Yeah. So you're talking about down here, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So sometimes what I'll do is I want to use, in our case, what I was starting to build before I encountered that strangeness, is we had our scratches coming out, scratching out the paint off of this metal mask. But you'd expect to see like a bump there, really. So I'm taking, in this particular case, I'm taking the same exact thing we just did before, right? And I'm splitting it out into a different gradient that I'm using in the bump channel of our material. So you can see here, I'm splitting it out and I'm changing the values. Let me make sure you guys can see this okay. I'm changing the values of those scratches so that black becomes 50% gray, and the white is darker than 50%, because think about a bump map as like 50% gray is kind of the water level, and anything that's brighter than 50% gray is going to shoot up over the surface. Anything that's darker than 50% gray is going to shoot down into the surface. So as you can see here, I clamped the white or the black down and I made the white darker. So basically we're creating a bump map that makes it look like the mask has been scratched right there. So you can, if I disable that node, it's going to be kind of hard to see. Let me see if I can just make this a little bit bigger. But you can really kind of see it in here. Oh
yeah, there you go. Yeah, if I'm hearing you right too, you're saying not only is it a just plain old different material in that area, you're using a bump map to make it look like almost like a paint layer is flicked away,
Yep.
and below the paint, which has some thickness to it, there's the metal below it. So
Yep.
you get this little edge, this little beveled edge almost where your scratches are. I got it.
Yeah, you can really see it here in this little divot scratch. You know, which if you're doing a close up like this, this might be a bit heavy handed. But if the shot is like out here and this far away, it's nice to be able to see that little highlight. So it looks like the paint actually has thickness, which is really kind of nice.
Yeah,
But
this is great. We have a couple questions I want to get to.
Yeah, let's do some questions.
Somebody asked about the lighting. What are you using for lighting?
Okay, let's jump back out into our wide shot for that, and we'll make this a little bit. I'm doing something very, very simple, which is kind of what I tend to do when I'm doing look dev and just kind of working on materials. I have one of our HDRIs in an Octane Sky, and in the background, I have a single area light pointing at a plane that's my background plane. So if we jump into a perspective here and we unhide my background layer, it's a very simple setup.
Got it. So then you just have like a white material on the plane.
Yep, that's pretty much it. And then what I like about this workflow, and I'm in Aces, by the way, which is why we get this beautiful white highlight roll off. If I'm doing it this way, I can really control where I want that gradient to happen. So if I was gonna, try to make it look like the gradient's coming from up there, I could do that pretty easily. Obviously, it's a pretty bright scene, but if I brought this intensity down of this, you would see that a little bit more. So if I did that,
got a little gradient back there.
If I have a little gradient back there with that light, which I can make that more intense if I want, just by coming in here and that kind of a cool backlit look.
All right, what's your go-to HDRI? I got to see what one you were using.
So I can't show that HDRI because
I'm digging too deep. Is that a future?
It's too deep. It's new. I can't show it yet. But
okay. I'm sorry I asked. I didn't know.
Sorry, I didn't know I was going to use it, but they're so good that I ended up using it. So if you're a Plus member, you're gonna get it soon.
Wow, that sounds like a serious setup, Chad. But I'm sorry, I didn't know you were using that.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Here, let me bring this back to where it was. Whoop, not that high.
Well, it's pretty. I want it now.
Yeah, it's definitely a good one.
Oh, you got a lot of power in that too.
Yeah, don't be afraid to if you're in Aces, don't be afraid to put some power into this because you want it, to look real, and lights are bright. So get some more energy going in there. See what it does. So one of the things, like when
Adam
you start,
says this is scripted. That was a very scripted moment.
How come nobody said live? Is this live?
Is this live yet? Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you were at default, and you start to like mess around with this, and you're like, oh, well, this looks pretty good. Like that looks good. I don't think it does. Like I think that a lot of times we're afraid to kind of like blow out our shots in 3D, mainly because a lot of people aren't using Aces, and it would definitely fringe and do some really gross stuff. But that's the beauty of Aces, is like you can start to do these like really beautiful blown out looks, and it doesn't really fall apart. So it's kind of great.
Yeah, it's like when you see a behind the scenes on your favorite movie, and it's shot with like an iPhone or a camcorder or like something that's not the actual camera. It is so bright, right? Like,
yeah.
It is like unbelievably bright, and they're using all this great light to shape and move light around in ways that is hard to do. So they create contrast with super bright lights and super dark shadows, and then essentially be able to compress it in many different ways using film. And this actually brings us to a question. Somebody, I forgot who asked it. I apologize. It was a while back. Was asking about LUTs versus like a filmic workflow versus Aces, and like when to use each of those. So in this case, you're using Aces. Would you ever add a LUT to this, or is Aces kind of like replace all that?
I mean, there's no hard and fast rules. You can do whatever you want. It's art. It's supposed to be experimental. So like if you want to use a LUT with Aces, go for it. If it gets you what you want. I typically I typically don't, but I have, and it's all about what you're after. Another little trick that I do when I'm using Octane is I mess with the white point. So the white point by default is going to be 0. It's going to be completely white. And I don't like that. Like, I want there, in this particular shot, I wanted there to be a little bit of a blue-green cast to it, just to make it feel, I don't know, just like a little bit cooler, I guess. And so I tweaked the white point to like a magenta, and let's just make this a little heavy-handed so you can see,
Oh, I
and
see.
bring a little bit more of the blue in. There we go. So this has just a little bit of that futuristic green cast to it, not a lot, and you got to just be really subtle with it.
Yeah,
But
it's always the opposite color. It should be known.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. So that's how white balance works. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. But yeah, so if let's just oh man, store render show and picture viewer. There we go. I couldn't remember how to do it, and I just did. All right, so let's bring this back down to 0, and we'll do the same thing. Showing, there we go. I don't know if it's going to come through the stream. It's pretty subtle, but just that little bit of color goes a long, long way. Obviously, you could do this in post, so it's really kind of like, pick your method. But I like to do it in here just because sometimes I'm working in Octane, and the beauty of working in Octane is that you can just do it so fast. So for me, like, I kind of like to be able to do this in the IPR like this.
Well, it's great. You get to look dev, and then it allows you to do it and not have to go back to tweak anything. Now you see like a scratch is too big, you can dial that in without having to. You could stay in the same program. All right, I have a couple extra little questions about these surface imperfections. I've been finally diving in and using them more in my renders. You've shown it in the bump map. You've shown it. You've shown these surface imperfections being used in roughness. Are there any other channels that work well with this? I should also say you've also used them in mask mode, which is just purely saying, blending two materials together and saying only show this material where the black and white map exists. So there's 3 different ways we've used them just in this material. Are there other places that you would use these surface imperfections or black and white maps?
So those are the most common uses, is going to be in roughness, in bump, revealing things, cutting away things, layering things. You could use them in anisotropy, in an anisotropic rotation, which, you could try to, if you're using some of the smudges, you could kind of get like that grease look, where how grease sometimes will skew reflections. But that's a pretty deep use of it. But yeah, those are the basics. And really, like I said before, there's no rule book, like you can experiment with them and come up with your own workflows with them. But these are the most common workflows that we use. Revealing different materials, revealing different colors, compositing different stuff into your diffuse, just, wherever they make sense. And, yeah, we have quite a few, and we're adding more all the time. And yeah, they're super. They're just a lot of fun, and they're really nice to play around with. I mean, you can see like how fast we were able to get that look going.
Yeah, they're high res too, which is hard to find online. You just kind of search for stuff, and they're all seamless. And they're all in the Plus library. So we try to make it easy, and there are some new ones coming soon for those of you asking. We got a question about using this in Arnold. So we mentioned this earlier on. All of this entire technique that Chad just went through, it's going to be almost identical in Arnold. The mix shader is called what in Arnold?
Let's see. I believe it's called a material mixer. Let's go ahead and look really quick.
Yeah, and the bigger answer to that question is we're going to have something right now we're calling cheat sheets, but might be called something later down the road, which is the ability to show you a node setup on how to achieve certain results and let you see it in the renderer that you use. So that's something we're working on behind the scenes, and not quite sure when it's out, but we're working on ways to get you guys these recipes in your specific renderer so that you could use these no matter if you use Arnold, Redshift, or Octane. So what is it here in Arnold?
It's a mix shader.
Mix shader.
They also have a layer shader, but if I remember correctly, this may be different now, but I remember the layer shader was actually, I think it might be less efficient than the mix shader. So you might want to use the mix shader and not the layer shader. At least that's the way I remember it, unless that's changed. But yeah, so that's what you'd want to do for that.
Awesome. And one more question from my side. You ready?
Yeah. What you got?
Can you bring in an existing Greyscalegorilla material? Let's maybe a wood or something that is kind of like just pretty, but what doesn't have a lot of scratches in it, and then show me where you would add one of these surface imperfections to make it more imperfect in a pre-existing node that you didn't make from scratch.
Yeah. So pick a material that you think would look cool on our model here, and we'll try it out.
Even just one of our metals, I think, would be good. Like just one of the pretty metals, and then show me where we would add our own imperfections.
Cool. So let's use iron or gunmetal. What's going to look cooler? Let's do iron base, and let's throw that onto our aged head here, and we'll just go ahead and get rid of all these material tags. All right, so here we are with a default iron base material from Everyday Material Collection, and let's say get active material, and here it is in all of its glory. Let's just kind of move some of these nodes around so that we can tell what the hell we're doing. All right, so the question was, how do we add? Do you want to add dirt or do you want to add scratches?
I would just say, like, a lot of times I just want to add like some rough scratches to it. Would I guess the question is it already has a roughness shader on it. Could I keep the roughness shader that's there and then add, maybe I already got my question answered.
You already got your answer, I see.
This is the same question you asked me earlier. Add them together to a new one. So maybe now I'm kind of getting it, but maybe show that workflow, how to add new scratches to a material that already has a roughness shader built in, just like this.
Yeah. So let's find some scratches. I'm gonna go back to that one that I liked up here. I think it was this one. I'll drop that in, make sure it's linear. So let's change our gamma.
Is that across the board? You want to make stuff linear like that?
I mean, typically when you're doing what are called data channels, anything that's not going to be showing up as a color per se is going to be a 1.0 linear gamma. But there's no rules. If you play with the gamma and it gets you the result that you want, then that's perfect. But typically I start that way, and I just kind of mess around as I go. All right, so let's grab that gradient, that octane gradient, which we all love, and let's just grab and add. Or you could do this a couple of.
Can't believe I knew the answer, but look at this.
I'm just doing it this way because it's super simple. I'm actually working on a tutorial right now where I show like a slightly more in-depth version of this. All right, so let's put that into our roughness, and let's go ahead and bring the value down because that's going to be way too rough. I'm going to bring this whole thing up so people can see us, hopefully. I'm not sure if that's getting lost or not, but all right, let's drop this down. And I'm just going to bring that value down because we don't want it to be overpowering, but I do want it to be visible on.
It is still covered, Chad. Is it black and white value you're just messing with?
Yeah. Is that better?
That's good.
Yeah. So I'm basically just bringing the white value of the scratch map down because when it's being added onto the iron one that's already pre-existing, it's pretty obnoxiously rough. It's like a roughness of 1. So, okay, we successfully added our little gradient to this dude, and we're good to go. But now we might want to throw it into a bump. So let's split that gradient off again. I'm just hitting Control and dragging that gradient off. And we are going to take this one, and this is going to become our bump. So let's grab our gradient. We know that we want our bump to be the scratches to be taken out of our mask, because scratches on metal don't add metal, they take away metal. So we want the white to be chunked out of that metal. So I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. Yeah, let me just make that darker than 50% gray, like maybe like, I don't know, 35, 40%. And we want our black level to be 50%. And then we're going to plug this right into our bump. And let's take a look at that. And oh my God, it's so overpowering. Whatever shall we do? There's a trick here. You can just come in here and just try to make it a little bit less dark and try to get down to that level that looks correct. It's getting better, but it's still pretty heavy-handed. And at a point, you're just going to get to this point where you can't really adjust this percentage too much further. So here's a trick that you can do. Let me just bring this. Let me bring this to a 0. Actually, we'll make that 100%. We need to create a control for this. So let's grab a float value, and we're going to multiply this float value by our gradient. So let's grab a multiply, and we'll put the float into texture 1, and this into texture 2. And what we're basically doing is we're creating an intensity slider that's going to be a little bit easier for us to control. Let me just explain what I just did there in a second after I kind of get this to where I like it. There we go. So right off the bat, I didn't have like a really good way of controlling the intensity of that bump. And this isn't like perfect. This is kind of a fast and dirty way of doing it, because you can see it actually knock down the whole value of the entire map, not just the dark parts. But fast and dirty is what we're doing today, so that's what I did. So I'm taking the gradient and I'm multiplying a float, which is just a number, on top of the gradient, which essentially darkens it up and gives me a more controllable slider to create the look that I'm after. So yeah, that's the scratches happening on our model. I think I might even bring that value down even a little bit more. Still a little intense for my taste. That's feeling better. Yeah, so that's how you do it.
That makes sense. I haven't seen that multiply idea. It's like a volume slider essentially you're creating. So everything looks great. Can't really move the gray values. Can't really go back to the original and change the power of the original because it's feeding other stuff. So what other options do you have? You're like, okay, I gotta set up a volume slider essentially for like how bright I want this. That makes sense.
Yeah, and honestly, it's really just math at that point, because you're taking, let me just solo this. You're taking this value and you're multiplying. It's literally multiplication, like, 5 times 6 or whatever, You're taking the value, let's say 1 is like, if we zoom way in on this scratch right here, and that's a value of almost 1. It's probably whatever our gradient was set to. We can tell really quickly. Yeah, that's going to be 1. And we're taking that and we're multiplying it by 0.007. And that's literally what we're doing. We're multiplying the value. Yeah. So it's pretty, once you start like thinking about material creation in these ways, it starts to like click and you start to understand and it's not magic and it's not like some, black box. It's really kind of understandable.
Amazing. All right. This is great. I've learned at least 4 new things that I could do now when I'm messing around with materials. This is amazing. And some people are asking about recording. This is being recorded. It should be available on YouTube if you came in late. And if you really missed it, Chad just showed how to use these black and white maps, surface imperfections, to create. Now it's like 4 or 5 different ways to use them in your renderer to create imperfections, subtle detail, and make this stuff look right. I didn't want to leave without talking about our favorite subject, Chad, which is scale. How do you decide? I saw you mess around with the scale and you're like, that's too big, that's too small. How do you think about scale in the context of surface imperfections and making sure the scratches are the right size, for example, or the thumbprints are the right size? How are you mentally thinking of that? Is it all visual, or are you saying like a hand would need to be this big to create this thumbprint? How do you go about that?
I start with a real scale, so I kind of like make sure that this head is the size of like a human head in inches. And a neat little trick you can do is to grab anything in Cinema 4D, for instance, a cube, and it'll do the math conversions for you. So if you actually know that your a head is like what, like 12 inches, maybe less, 10 inches. So you can actually type in here 10 IN and it'll do the conversion for you. So if you've ever like messed with that 10 IN, or if you know it's like a foot, you can actually type 1 FT and it'll do the conversion for you. So usually what I'll do is I'll be like, all right, well, how big is this object that I have in here? Well, it's about a foot. So I'll do 1 foot. And then I'll just kind of like, you know, work to that scale. And then based on whatever the subject is, everything is basically, the scale is based on that. So a thumbprint, once I've set the scene scale correctly, is going to be dependent on the scale of her eye or what feels correct. You know, like a thumbprint isn't going to be the size of her whole head. It'll be the size of a thumbprint. So it's kind of like, you know, common sense type of scaling based on what your subject matter is. And that goes for the camera and the lensing, which if you haven't listened to our live stream about that, like that's an important decision too. And I'm using a very long lens. I think I'm using like 100mm lens, and the bokeh is definitely like, you know, I also am using an sorry, gosh, I'm gonna get my terms correct. I'm using an anamorphic type of lens. It's not anything crazy. I'm basically just stretching the bokeh up to make it look like an anamorphic lens.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, so many things come back to scale at the end. I just wanted to make sure it all fits together. You know, when you're literally rebuilding things in 3D, trying to make them look real, it does matter what the scale of all this stuff is. So look at how cool that is. That's amazing. Chad, thank you so much. I learned a ton. I'll be more powerful in Octane, and remember this stuff. Almost one-to-one works in all the major renderers. People were asking about physical. Black and white maps, of course, work in physical. They have their own node system, and it'll be a similar setup, a similar term. Terms will be found. So you may have to figure out like what's a blend node in your specific renderer. But the technique of it all, here, let me, you all set, chat? I'll switch to our side-by-side here.
Yeah, I was just letting this last one cook down.
Oh yeah, dude, let that cook because that looks great. I love the little details on the top, little paint flecks and all that. Where was I? So yeah, it all comes down to the scale we were talking about, physical render. That's where I ended it. I think that's good. All right, let's answer a couple more questions here as we roll into 2 hours. Jeez. Oh my goodness. And I wanted to thank you guys once again for coming by. It's 3 a.m. here. Adam, thanks for coming by. People have taken naps. They've come back. They're like, you're still here. Wow, it's amazing.
Don't you guys have a life? What is going on?
Thank you guys so much for coming. If this is your first live show, please don't forget to give this a thumbs up. Helps us get the word out about it. And this recording will be on YouTube after the fact if you made it late. And we try to do these live shows every other week. And this is also a season. So we're going to be wrapping up this season of the live shows. Take a little break in the summer, just like all of you should, and try to get out safely and do some other things. Get that creative brain flowing so that when you're back at your computer, you have some new ideas. We're going to be doing the same thing here. So make sure you stay tuned for the next few weeks as we wrap up the season. You know, this is our goal. Our goal is to come here, answer your questions, talk to Plus members, answer their questions, and specifically show you guys some of the tools, techniques, little tips, just like we did today, on how to make stuff look more realistic, more interesting, more detailed in Cinema 4D. It's what we're trying to do here. So we appreciate when you come by and check it out. We're here to help. All right. Any last questions? You guys throw it up. We'll do a little lightning round as we wrap up and watch Octane just be pretty. Thank you. That's great. I do like that bokeh. I'll have to ask my question about anamorphic lens flares a little bit later, or not lens flares, anamorphic lens bokeh a little bit later. Great show. Thank you guys so much. Loved watching. Great show, Chad and Nick. I appreciate that. Blitz says, just got here. Can we start again? Yeah, absolutely. Hey guys, welcome.
No.
To Grace. Get ready, Chad. Yeah, the replay will be available on YouTube. And also, if you haven't checked out some of the other shows, you liked what we jumped into, definitely check out past episodes of the live show. We've gone through cameras and lighting and showed you some of the other details on how to set up realistic renders like this. All right, here. Is there an Octane demo trial to try out? I'm pretty sure there's an Octane demo. I'm 99% sure that they have a trial demo.
Yeah, I think they do.
How easy is it to set up aces in Redshift? Tougher than an Octane for now. I think it's pretty safe to assume everybody's looking at aces and deciding what to do and bring it into their workflow. So I would assume that a lot of renders are going to have a way to mess with this soon. Let's see here. Oh, look how pretty that is.
So we can look at sRGB compared to aces. It's really no contest.
You have both set up?
Yeah, here's
sRGB,
aces.
Yeah, and even if you back down, like if you go to your sRGB preview and even made the lights dimmer to even try to match it, it'll definitely show you. Because sometimes you'll look at it and be like, oh, it's just brighter or darker. No. If you go dim down your light, try to match that, it'll instantly become apparent. Like, look at the fall off. Oh my gosh. Like, look at her right cheek, okay? See the right cheek and how dirty that is and how the fall off is not natural the way that the aces one, if you go back to aces, it just kind of like, and oh, that's way too bright, right? Obviously. Oh, here we go.
Wait,
we got the slider.
Hold on a minute. I got to remember how to do this. All right. This one should be B.
Okay. You got the AB slider. Yeah. Look at that. So similar tone as far as brightness, but look at the fall off, especially in the scratches, right? Especially in those little subtle details that you added. It helps almost like blend things together. And
right
again,
here,
look at that.
Dude. Like it especially is visible in the highlight right here. Just look at like how it's clipped and kind of garish looking, but like in aces, it's just like butter.
Yeah, it falls off naturally. So if you're interested in aces, that's what we're showing here, the difference between aces and what you might be rendering right now, which is sRGB, which you can do things in post to clean it and get a little bit closer to something like this, but to have it in the renderer and it all looks like this right from look at that. What a difference. And then you just brighten it up. Zing. Anyway, that is aces. We've got videos all over YouTube about it. We have a deep dive on Plus about it. It just looks beautiful. It looks more filmic. Let your bright colors kind of fall off more naturally. Also helps shadows. I don't know. It's magic. It just reminds me of when linear came out. And you did the same thing, Chad. You were yelling back then. Hey, everybody, use linear.
You'd think do it. People would believe me by now.
And everyone's like, what's this linear thing Chad keeps yelling about? And
Dude,
then
when I first started talking about aces, everybody was like, oh, it's just tone mapping. What do you wait? No. I'm like, okay, just wait.
All right, let's wrap up here. Rachel, thank you for your help today. Rachel also mentions if you go to look at some of our other live streams, we've added chapter markers to help you find specific bits. Absolutely. And Rachel and Mike and the team have been taking these live shows, remastering them essentially for YouTube so that you can find stuff better with the chapter markers. And I also mentioned this at the beginning of the show. You're going to want to make sure you're subscribed to our podcast. We're also going to bring parts of our Q&A to the podcast, including some other goodies coming soon. So if you've been missing the podcast, make sure you're subscribed. You just type in Greyscalegorilla podcast into any one of your podcast apps. Not only do you have access to all of the other episodes from the past, but get ready for some new stuff coming soon. Thank you, Rachel, as always, for the help. And unless we have any other last minute questions, let's wrap this thing up. We do have one ACES question that I probably need to know the answer to as well. Andy is asking, what's the best way to save out your image rendered with ACES? Do you need the color profile for post as well? Chad, what's your workflow?
We have a video for that. I think I covered that in my ACES in Octane in under 5 minutes. But yeah, there's some steps you have to do to get that working. But definitely go check out the video. If Rachel is still in the chat, she could probably link that out.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you. As always, thank you everybody in the chat. Thank you for coming by. And stay tuned. Stay tuned for another live show in the next couple weeks. Stay tuned for some plus updates in the next month or so. We've got the chat accidentally showed you part of today. Get ready. Lighting brought to you by Future HDRIs coming soon. Very excited to show you that stuff. As always, thank you Plus members for coming by and for asking great questions. We appreciate you as well. And that is it from me. Chad, anything else before we say goodbye?
No, thanks for hanging out for so long. Hopefully you got something out of it. And yeah, look forward to the next one. Awesome.
Check out Chad's latest tutorial on YouTube. We got an Arnold tutorial up on YouTube, just dropped. And we also have some other goodies coming to YouTube as well. You're obviously here, most of you on YouTube, so make sure you're subscribed and hit the bells and do all that YouTube-y stuff. It helps us out, and it helps you see stuff as soon as it's out. So, ooh, look at that. Got a little hazy backlit look going.
Hell yeah.
Okay. Well, hey, if you're listening to the podcast version of this, Chad's just rendering pretty stuff, and I'm staring at it. So I'll and don't forget, if you're listening to the podcast version of this, you can come watch this on YouTube. All right. I'm talking in circles. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, chat. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Rachel. I will see you guys in another live show really soon. Cheers from all of us here at Greyscalegorilla. Happy Thursday, y'all.
Bye, everybody.
Oh, I'll cut to the side by side. Oh, we got a triple. Bye, everybody. Appreciate you. Have a good one.